They've got many names. Skyden is what we call them. And the reason for that is we have a symbiotic relationship with them that's gone on since the beginning of time. For all the time that we've been together.
The soils and the plants and bears and eagles, they all rely heavily on the salmon returning to get their nutrients.
The fish is very important to our diet. Very important to our diet.
They have looked after us. They have looked after our nutritional needs, our societal needs, you name it, they've done it.
Salmon are extremely important, like really integral to the ecological functioning here, especially on the coast in BC.
Our connection to the salmon, our connection to the trees, the birds, the plants, we look at those as relatives. So how's the water feeling when we're seeing these algae blooms? What is it telling us? It's not healthy, it's not happy, there's something going on.
This past summer, we experienced two of the greatest algae blooms that I've seen in my time here.
This past year we experienced dead fish in this lake that should have been spawning in the creeks. We're just starting to see declines and more declines in fish, right? And it's not only the salmon.
The unfortunate reality of what we face right now is the fact that they need our help.
It's important that we work together and that we hear each other and what our concerns are about not just salmon, but about all things in total. And I think that's how we solve problems.
I have hope that they're resilient enough to be able to sustain and carry on into the future. We just have to do everything we can to support that.
It's really looking at the streams and the systems that come into where the salmon are coming into, ensuring that those are protected, the vegetation is protected. I'm gonna say, like this example where we're at here in Kūwscémxŭ Creek, we're in a pretty big sand deposit here, and that's the creation of sediment from upstream. So it just creates issues for salmon and other fish to kind of get into the system. So how do we look at restoring things like this when it just becomes more and more of a problem because of some of the sediment issues upstream and just the flow of water. And it really varies with the freshets that we get and all that, all the extra funness with climate change.
And every time the water came up, more dirt fell into the river, providing a lot of sediments in the river that are not helpful for habitat. So with some help from DFO, and giving credit where credit's due, there were some people that were working for them at that point in time that were really super good at helping out us. We were able to collaborate on a project where we put in what they're called, I believe it's called in the salmon recovery business, is true revetments. So we dug these big logs right back in underneath, and then we shored them up with some rock, and then we planted some mostly red osier dogwood, cottonwoods, or sandbar willows all along them. And then we just waited to see what would happen. But with successful floods now, we've got a lot of sediments that are being deposited there, a lot of river debris that's been deposited there. And now we've got natural succession coming back in a very, what I would call a very robust form. And we're just delighted with it.
In this watershed, we're pretty well, I guess, surrounded by the agriculture industry here, and that's kind of been like that for as long as I've been alive, and even longer. So really looking at addressing like the access to water, and again, when we look at the hay fields and what they're doing to create hay fields, how they're pumping water out of the systems. I know they are being more creative and more efficient on pulling water out of the system and using it as opposed to the old systems.
So when we fence the river, guess who doesn't drink out of the river? Yeah, the cows don't drink out of the river. So where do they drink? Well, we've got to pump water from a well underground, provide electricity, have the cattle drink in an off site, like off the river corridor, for water over there. We got to maintain that, try and keep that from freezing when it's minus 30. And there's a real expense to all of that. And so that, to say that we're not committed would be not truthful, because we're very committed. We've taken and put a lot of money into providing water for cattle so they're not in this area. And many, many other ranchers in Nicola are on this program. Like, the majority of ranchers do not use the river to water the cattle in. So what do we get out of that? We get the bill, right? Which we're happy to do. But society is really good at pointing out the things you're not doing right, but they're not always very good at supporting the things you are doing right. And I think that's an attitude that should change, and I think there are ways to make that happen, but I don't know if they've been fully explored by all the people that want to save all the things that we want to save.
So agriculture is a huge part of life here in the Nicola Valley, and obviously having water-intensive agriculture in a flow-sensitive system presents its challenges. This is challenging for water managers and the ranchers themselves, for the fish. So yeah, it's a challenge, and it doesn't have very obvious solutions. I know lots of ranchers have moved to more water-efficient ways of agriculture. So that's an important step forward. Yeah, it's just a very big challenge. Yeah, there's been water shutoffs in a lot of areas here in BC that are water sensitive, and that's been hard for the agricultural community as well as the people having to make that decision. I'm sure it's not easy. Like, we have a lot of drought and low flow and high temperatures, so like conserving water is a huge one. Household water use, like here in Merritt, is super high per capita. And yeah, that's definitely not great in such a flow sensitive area. So that's like one area that would definitely be a good one.
We actually collaborated with the ranchers here in the Nicola through the collaboration with the Nicola Watershed Governance Partnership to work with the ranchers to shut the water off end of August, actually, which is quite a bit of a struggle when you're still trying to grow crops for cattle. But we ended up having an agreement with the ranch to shut water off. To the result of that, we still didn't have enough water. So all that effort to shut everything off, we realized this problem is a little bit bigger. I really reflect on the current legislation that's being used for drought or water scarcity, and it's a reactive notion of use of legislation. So how do we reflect on a proactive approach to this? And water storage is one of them. Anything in the headwaters that needs addressing or support. There's work with beaver dam analogs that help. But in this case here, we're looking for a response time of water that is quite instant.
We're literally back to square one in terms of the redevelopment of the watershed. So I would say that it begins with the assessments. And those are all listed in here. This is an action plan that's been laid out by these 86 people as to what both the terrestrial and aquatic requirements are in terms of rebuilding it. It contains all of the prescriptions in terms of the technical requirements, slope understanding, and all of that. It's all in here. The physical aspects of what is needed are contained within this document. What is missing is the will. What is missing is the financing for it.
So it's quite important that we work with ranchers to address those timing needs for their needs on producing food for the cattle, as well as ensuring there's enough water in the system for the fish when they need to spawn.
So if you were asking me for one single solution that we should all try and collaborate on, it would be, we really need to address the storage issue. And an example of that would be last fall, just before Christmas, we had another big rain event. You know, everybody, the highways closed and groceries can't get here. You know, it's all very newsworthy for about a week. But the amount of water that came right past here in that 1 week, you wouldn't even need to capture 1% of it in order to fill up a ginormous amount of storage.
We got to look at these connections about, you know, how do we help the cattle survive? How do we help the deer and the moose? You know, they need water and access to this stuff as well. And even the birds that come here and utilize this lake, right? We're starting to see a shift in that. With these warmer days, warmer winters, we see more birds, like some of these swans and pelicans that I've seen stay here this winter, which usually doesn't happen. So we just got to keep those in mind and work with the ranchers to make sure that, you know, we're putting these bank protection pieces in, access to water, and just restoring like this stream here.
We try and allow, in the way we manage, so that there are places along the river system that provide shade, habitat, and cold water refugia for salmon. So that is what we are trying to do, and I believe it does make a difference. In total, for the salmon population, I would not suggest that what we're doing here is going to be able to stop the downward trend in salmon, because I think it's a function of many partnerships along the whole journey of a salmon's life.
Most important actions we can take is on the habitat front. You know, the human impacts on habitat have been really detrimental to salmon populations. We've changed the courses of the river and the way that the ecosystem is allowed to function. And I think that's one of the biggest areas that we can actually have power to make some improvements on in the future. And there's also climate change is another huge one. We definitely have to limit our impacts on that. Of course, we've had damage done so far, but anything that we can do to limit that moving forward will definitely be huge.
And I say climate change because when you look at snowmelt, you know, these mountains around here should be full of snow, but they're not. And now we're seeing snow stay at like maybe 1,000 meters elevation, and anything below that, there's no snow. And so all these water holes that we use for storing water that they used to do back in the day are useless now because the snow just evaporates, or there just isn't any at this elevation. And so now we have snow above 1,000 meters, and it all comes down in May. It used to come down in June. We probably could not get enough fish out of this system to properly feed the people. And that's just how much it's changed, how much we influence. So how do we get back to that in the world that we're in? You know, with the technology we have, it should be quite simple. But there's so many challenges across the province and the world on water issues and fish issues that it makes it really challenging to focus on certain areas. And so this is why the localized lead piece comes in. Because I live here and I'm going to continue to live here, and we really need these governance collaborations to do something with it. Not just one province, one federal or First Nations on its own. I've been learning to understand is we need to collaborate, we need to coexist. So we need to do this together. And so this is what this Mcleod Watershed Partnership is advocating for.
But if we don't have open communication about what's going on, and if we don't have open communication about the goals that we all have and that we set, it's almost guaranteed that we're not going to achieve collaboration. But it all starts with a proper functioning communication system that lays out what's going on. And then the second part of that is you have to initiate action. At some point, you have to go forward with the best information you have and fix something that you're capable of fixing, or doing something that you're capable of doing.
If we're not protecting what's going on in the headwaters, the effects start to come downstream. And I speak to this blue-green algae issue that we've been experiencing here, probably more across BC lately. We've been dealing with this up in Douglas Lake, so what, that maybe 50 kilometers upstream for the last 5 years. And we've been testing it and learning about it. And now Mcleod Lake is starting to experience the same issues. So we've got 5 years of experience dealing with that, right? So it seems to be things kind of fall downstream, so to speak. And if we're not learning about what's going on up there, it's going to be too late.
Dam removals is a huge one that's been happening. And that goes along with habitat. Basically, it's opening up habitat that was once available and then is no longer. And then just improving that habitat in general is a really important step for recovering salmon.
You know, they've removed dams and salmon have come back and have patched back through into the systems. So there is hope, there's examples, and we just got to work collaboratively to get to that point and make it happen before it gets beyond a point of no return.
People need to recognize that fish don't stay in one spot, you know. They swim throughout our territories. And being anadromous, they don't just stay in this watershed. You know, they start here and they make their way to the ocean, live out there for a while, and then come back. So this effort is going to require even much more than the 5 bands. It's going to require everybody.
There are periods in the history of our valley, there's periods in the history of our country where people become divided for whatever reasons. And it's not a helpful way for us to move forward.
We'll have the kids coming back down to the rivers, you know, handling salmon with their bare hands, getting to develop that symbiotic relationship that I talk about that we have had with them since the beginning.
So hope is to have the system back in a state where we can enjoy it the same way our elders did, my grandpa did. So we got to remember that there's a cumulative piece here that we're all connected.
We'll have salmon back.